Hey, Adam, the other day, a coaching friend of mine started talking about how she uses this whole idea of like red light, yellow light, green light foods with her clients. And, I'll be really honest, it's never been a component of what I teach to my clients. Do you use that with yours?
No, no, definitely not.
Okay, definitely not. So that to me says that you have some pretty strong feelings about it, which I do too. But I thought this would be a really interesting topic for us to discuss because I feel like definitely in the world of weight loss, in the world of dieting, in the world of even health coaching, here we are, health coaches, really trying to like help people holistically heal themselves and get better and get well and take care of themselves. There are these rules. So you said definitely not. Why?
I just think the more rules there are, the more people will rebel. I think, there's a lot of rebellion. There's a lot of things that come up when there's hard and fast rules. And it's like, perhaps the very reason why we gained weight is what's going to make us want to break those rules anyway.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I've actually heard people say like, oh, those foods that I'm not supposed to eat, bless
Thanks.
you, they end up like wanting to eat them more. I mean, clients do that all the time, right? Like if we put a hard no on something, they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to touch it. I mean, it's like, Eve in the in the Garden of Eden, don't eat the apple,
Right,
right?
right.
But I think the other side of this is we assume that there's like magic keys to unlock the door, right? Like there are these magic foods like kale. Eat kale. Everything will be okay.
Remember
But the
acai
truth is
berries?
everybody's oh,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
what
or
are they?
acai? I don't even know.
Listen, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be eating it. That's my only rule, right? Like when people are like, "Is this a good product?" I'm like, "I don't know. Can you pronounce
Yeah,
those
yeah,
ingredients?" But this is just the point, right? Like each person's body is set up with a different set of responses to food. And for any coach to sit there and say like, "Okay, eat more of those, eat less of that," specifically, I I mean, I feel like that's just like challenging somebody to go and like thumb their nose at that rule, right? Like rules are made to be broken. That's where we get our kicks.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. This comes up a lot with clients where it's like one of their parents or someone said something to them when they were younger about losing weight, and it created this rebellion in them. It's like, screw you, I'm not going to lose weight for you, right? And in turn, they kind of turn that those emotions into, their empowerment was like going the opposite way, right? And um, interestingly enough, what happens is sometimes once those people are no longer in their life, or maybe a parent passes away, that's when they actually are able to lose the weight because it's not about that person anymore. They're not doing it to like thumb their nose at that person anymore. It's I'm doing this for me. And I think
Mm.
rules just bring up a lot of, it brings up a lot. There's no question about that. But I do think for some people, they're exerting their power um, by eating whatever they want and going the opposite way, and it creates reactance, right? I mean, as a parent, it's like if you tell your kid to do one thing, often they want to do the opposite, right? It's like
Hmm.
don't do this, don't do that, and then they go the other way. Um, and that's that pushing one way is never, I don't think, an effective way to create the behavior you want.
Yeah. Well, I think it also brings up an interesting thought about friction, right? And you and I were talking about this earlier, this idea of resistance to what is creating suffering, right? And rules can be that. They create a friction, right? They create a resistance within us, which then starts to lead us into not good feelings, right? And so I know we're kind of going off on a different trail here, but I do think it's interesting. It's like, in my mind, in the idea of losing weight, perhaps getting healthy, I think generally everybody realizes like eat whole foods more often than processed foods. And beyond that, any further rigidity in food rules creates this idea of resistance, which ultimately leads to suffering.
Yeah.
So and maybe that's what it is we rebel against that miserable feeling of rules. I don't know. It's a little bit of a tangled web, but kind of going back to the start of this is like, are food rules something we need to have in place? Because I don't know that they necessarily help.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to each their own. I think having your own personal rules is very different than like someone telling you the rules, right? So for some people, it's like, all right, I will not eat after 8 p.m. no matter what, or I will not eat dessert, Monday through Friday. Like, I think the difference though is they're your own personal food rules, and it's also something that ultimately makes you feel better, um,
Hmm.
because adhering to them, gets you to where you want to be and helps you be the person you want to be. That said,
Right.
I always get worried, I worry about rules in that all rules get broken at times, and for many people, when they break the rule, they go off the rails, right? It's like, well, I broke this rule, so why bother? Um,
Hmm.
and that's where self-compassion comes into play, where it's like, we all break rules, we all mess up. How quickly can we recover? So I think
Right.
though, if you have your own personal rules that work for you, in fitness, in nutrition, in life, then I think you should adhere to those. But the key thing, I think it's coming from you.
I think that really matters. And I know that I'm sure you've experienced it. I experience it from time to time. People want you to just tell them what to do. They don't want to have to think for themselves a lot of times, which, listen, we're all in demand. There are so many decisions we have to make day in and day out. So I suppose I can see the place for something like red light, yellow light, green light foods at the start, but I don't think they're necessarily rules to live by forever. I do think that you're right. We have to, at some point, start to intuit our own version of things. Um, because honestly, that's the only way what rules really apply to you. And I think, you mentioned like, oh, we end up breaking rules. I think oftentimes we break rules because, like we talk about all the time, they're not sustainable. They're not applicable to our lifestyles. They don't fit the reality of our lives. And I talk with a lot of clients like, look, we just got to get really real about what we're
Yeah.
doing and then take that and make the plan based on what's already happening. So then we gain confidence and start to develop our own rules, right? But I do find there is that sort of resistance to doing that version. Somebody just wants you to just tell me what to do. Just tell me. I mean, how do you handle that? What do you do with your clients when they say, just Adam, just tell me what to
I
do?
don't mind that because some people just they want to outsource that. But the key thing I think is it has to be a collaborative approach. Hey, how does this feel? Does this feel realistic? Does this feel doable? Practical? Like, is there any chance we can't follow through with this? Like, those are important questions to ask, and I always ask them because if they don't feel comfortable from the start, then obviously we're going to be doomed for failure. So some people don't want to think and they don't know, and they just they want to outsource the whole thing, and that's fine. Again, so long as it's collaborative, and they feel that it's a realistic, doable plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Um,
So maybe the rule is red light, yellow light, green light foods, but eventually your own personal version of that.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I have my own rules. I mean, sometimes they're broken, but I don't know if it's rules or it's more, goals. But yeah,
Guidelines.
they're guidelines. They're guardrails, so to speak, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that's part of this journey. It's beautiful. What works for you, what doesn't. I mean, ultimately, happiness and success, I think, is about doing more of what works, more of what makes you successful, more of what makes you happy, and less of what doesn't. And part of that is like trying more of this, trying less of that, etc.
I like it. Cool. Well, thanks for exploring that thought with me. I just think it's interesting, and I just want people to know there's like permission to come up with your own food rules, um, to break them. I mean, break them, because I think that's where you figure out whether or not they even fit, they even work, right? I had a client who used to always say like freedom within the framework, and I think that's the expression of health. how much freedom can we give within a framework of health, right?
Yeah,
So
I really like that. I like that a lot. And, I think if you feel also, that resistance within you, it's worth exploring as well, right? And it's likely because something happened at one point in your life and it's causing that to come up, right? Why are these rules upsetting you? Why are they creating this tension within, right? And it's really interesting when you start to explore it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to run away from the rules, but again, it's going to bring up all these things that we just discussed.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll see you
All right.
soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked that video, check out the link for another great video right here.
And if you're having trouble staying consistent, if you feel like you know what to do but just can't seem to do it, I invite you to check out our coaching program. It's in the link below. We offer one-to-one accountability, coaching, support. I know you're going to love it, and let's go. Together we can make it happen.